Welcome to ZEMTV Movie Channel, your home for amazing movies and non-stop entertainment. Get ready to enjoy blockbuster hits, timeless classics, and exciting stories from every genre. Whether you love action, drama, comedy, or adventure, there's always something to watch here. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest uploads. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the movie experience with ZEMTV Movie Channel. The Matrix is a groundbreaking 1999 science fiction action film written and directed by the Wachowskis. As the first installment in the Matrix franchise, the film stars Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss, Hugo Weaving, and Joe Pantoliano. Set in a dark dystopian future, the story reveals a world where humanity is unknowingly imprisoned inside the Matrix, a highly advanced simulated reality created by intelligent machines. The film follows Neo, a talented computer hacker who is recruited by the mysterious Morpheus to join the fight against the machines and uncover the truth about reality. After the success of their 1996 thriller Bound, the Wachowskis received approval from Warner Brothers to bring their ambitious vision of the Matrix to life. The film drew inspiration from anime, Hong Kong martial arts cinema, and waifu choreography, giving its action scenes a unique visual style. It also borrowed philosophical concepts from Plato's allegory of the cave, elements of 1990s hacker culture, and William Gibson's influential cyberpunk novel Neuromancer. The movie introduced audiences to iconic ideas such as the red pill and revolutionized action filmmaking with the innovative bullet time visual effect, allowing the camera to appear as though it moves freely around characters while time slows dramatically. Released in US theaters on March 31, 1999, The Matrix received widespread critical acclaim for its groundbreaking visual effects, thrilling action sequences, impressive cinematography, and thought-provoking story. It became a major box office success, earning more than $460 million worldwide against a production budget of $63 million. The film was Warner Brothers' highest-grossing release of 1999 and the fourth highest-grossing film worldwide that year. The film won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Visual Effects, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, and Best Sound Effects Editing. It also earned numerous other honors, including BAFTA Awards for Best Sound and Best Special Visual Effects. At the Saturn Awards, the Wachowskis received recognition for Best Director, while The Matrix was named Best Science Fiction Film. Today, The Matrix is widely regarded as one of the greatest science fiction films ever made. In 2012, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for its cultural, historical, and artistic significance. Its enormous success led to 2 sequels to The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, both released in 2003. The franchise later expanded through comic books, video games, and the animated anthology The Animatrix. It has also inspired countless books, discussions, and theories exploring its philosophical and religious themes. In 2021, Lana Wachowski returned to direct the 4th installment, The Matrix Resurrections. Plot: in 1999, computer programmer Thomas Anderson secretly lives a double life as the hacker known as Neo. Fascinated by the mysterious term Matrix, he begins searching for answers, eventually crossing paths with the skilled hacker Trinity. She tells him that only Morpheus can explain the truth behind the Matrix. Soon, Neo becomes the target of powerful government-like programs known as the Agents, led by the relentless Agent Smith. While Morpheus secretly guides Neo over the phone in an attempt to help him escape, Neo ultimately gives himself up. The agents question Neo about Morpheus, but when he refuses to cooperate, they subject him to a terrifying experience by sealing his mouth shut and implanting a robotic tracking device inside his body. Neo later wakes up believing it was only a nightmare, until Trinity and her team remove the device and bring him to meet Morpheus. Morpheus presents Neo with a life-changing decision: take the blue pill and continue living in comfortable ignorance, or take the red pill and discover the truth. Choosing the red pill, Neo awakens in the real world, trapped inside a mechanical pod and connected to countless cables. He sees endless fields of humans imprisoned in identical pods, all being used by machines, before he is rescued by Morpheus and the crew of the hovercraft Nebuchadnezzar. Morpheus explains that the real year is approximately 2199. Long ago, humanity lost a devastating war against intelligent machines, leaving Earth in ruins. In an attempt to cut off the machines' solar power, humans darkened the sky, but the machines adapted by creating enormous farms where humans are grown and harvested for their bioelectric energy. To keep people unaware of their true condition, The machines built the Matrix are a sophisticated virtual reality that perfectly simulates human civilization. The few humans who escaped established Zion, the last free human city hidden deep underground. Morpheus and his crew regularly enter the Matrix to rescue others, using their knowledge of its artificial rules to perform extraordinary feats that appear impossible. However, they remain constantly hunted by the agents, powerful programs that protect the Matrix at all costs. Since the mind and body are connected, dying inside the Matrix also means dying in the real world. Morpheus believes Neo is the one, the legendary figure foretold by prophecy who possesses the power to defeat the machines and lead humanity to freedom. After meeting the Oracle inside the Matrix, Neo receives a surprising prediction. She suggests that he is not the one and warns that he will soon face a difficult choice, either his own life or Morpheus's. Before the crew can recover from the encounter, they are betrayed by Cypher, a frustrated crew member who longs to return to the comfortable illusion of the Matrix. His betrayal allows the agents to ambush the team. Believing Neo is humanity's greatest hope, Morpheus sacrifices himself by staying behind to fight Agent Smith and is captured. After leaving the Matrix, Cypher begins disconnecting his teammates from the real world, killing them one by one. Just as he is about to eliminate Neo and Trinity, Tanker, despite being badly wounded, stops and kills Cypher, saving the remaining crew members. Agent Smith interrogates Morpheus in an attempt to obtain the access codes to Zion's mainframe. If successful, the machines would be able to locate and destroy the last human city. Refusing to abandon his mentor, Neo returns to the Matrix alongside Trinity to rescue Morpheus. Their daring mission succeeds, allowing Morpheus and Trinity to escape. However, Neo stays behind to face Agent Smith. Embracing his growing abilities, Neo battles Smith as an equal and seemingly defeats him. But Smith returns by taking over another body and fatally shoots Neo. Meanwhile, in the real world, deadly machines known as Sentinels attack the Nebuchadnezzar. Standing beside Neo's lifeless body, Trinity confesses her love for him and reveals that the Oracle once told her she would fall in love with the One. Her words awaken Neo, who returns to life with a complete understanding of the Matrix. He can now see and manipulate its code at will, making him vastly more powerful than any agent. Neo effortlessly destroys Agent Smith and escapes the Matrix just as the Nebuchadnezzar uses its electromagnetic pulse to disable the attacking Sentinels. In the film's final scene, Neo delivers a message to the machines, promising to show humanity a future without limits or control. He then soars into the sky, embracing his destiny as the One. Main cast: Keanu Reeves as Neo, Thomas Anderson, a skilled computer programmer who secretly lives as the hacker Neo. Driven by the feeling that something is deeply wrong with the world, he searches for Morpheus and the truth behind reality. Several major actors, including Will Smith, Nicolas Cage, Brad Pitt, Val Kilmer, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Johnny Depp, were considered for the role before Reeves was ultimately cast. At one point, Warner Brothers even explored the idea of rewriting Neo as a female character for Sandra Bullock. Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus, the captain of the Nebuchadnezzar and one of the first humans freed from the Matrix. Morpheus firmly believes that Neo is the prophesied one destined to save humanity. Fishburne admired the screenplay's intelligence and based parts of his performance on Morpheus from Neil Gaiman's The Sandman comics. Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity, a fearless hacker and loyal member of the Nebuchadnezzar crew who becomes Neo's closest ally and eventual love interest. Although initially surprised by the physically demanding action sequences, Moss embraced the challenge after meeting the Wachowskis. Her performance helped launch her career. The role was also offered or considered for Janet Jackson, Sandra Bullock, Rosie Perez, Salma Hayek, and Jada Pinkett Smith before Moss was cast. Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith, a powerful agent program created to eliminate threats to the Matrix and prevent humans from escaping. Unlike the other agents, Smith gradually develops his own ambitions and desires freedom from his purpose. Weaving gave the character a calm, emotionless voice that felt neither completely human nor machine. Gloria Foster as the Oracle, a wise prophet who remains inside the Matrix and guides those who have escaped it. Using her foresight, she helps shape the future of humanity while encouraging individuals to discover their own paths. Joe Pantoliano as Cypher, a former rebel who regrets taking the red pill and longs to return to the illusion of the Matrix. His desire for a comfortable life leads him to betray Morpheus and the Resistance in exchange for a deal with Agent Smith. Marcus Chong as Tank, the Nebuchadnezzar's operator and Dozer's brother. Unlike most crew members, Tank was born naturally outside the Matrix rather than being grown by the machines. Paul Goddard as Agent Brown, one of the Matrix's agent programs who works alongside Agent Smith to hunt escaped humans and protect the system. Robert Towler as Agent Jones, another agent assigned to assist Smith in maintaining control of the Matrix and preventing human resistance. Julian R. Anger as Epoch, a trusted crew member of the Nebuchadnezzar who supports Morpheus's mission. Matt Dillon as Mouse, the ship's talented programmer, responsible for designing software and simulations used by the crew. Berlinda McClure as Switch, a courageous member of the Nebuchadnezzar who fights alongside Morpheus against the machines. Anthony Ray Parker as Dozer, the pilot of the Nebuchadnezzar and Tank's brother. Like Tank, he was born in the real world rather than inside the Matrix. Roland Wood as the Spoon Boy, a gifted child who understands how to bend the rules of the Matrix. His famous lesson about the spoon helps Neo realize that true power comes from changing perception rather than reality itself. Ada Nicodemu as De Jour, a minor character whose appearance references the famous White Rabbit from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, symbolizing Neo's journey into a hidden reality. Production: The Wachowskis developed The Matrix as a groundbreaking blend of science fiction, philosophy, cyberpunk, and martial arts. To bring their ambitious vision to life, the cast underwent months of martial arts and wire fighting training before filming began. The movie also introduced the revolutionary bullet time visual effect, which became one of the most influential filmmaking techniques in modern cinema. Combined with its innovative action sequences, thought-provoking story, and unforgettable characters, The Matrix became a global success and remains one of the most influential science fiction films ever made. Development: in 1994, the Wachowskis presented the script for Assassins to Warner Brothers Pictures. After reading it, then president of production Lorenzo Di Bonaventura was impressed enough to purchase the script and sign the filmmakers to a deal that also included 2 future projects: Bound and The Matrix. The Wachowskis went on to direct Bound first, and its critical success gave them the credibility to pursue their much more ambitious vision for The Matrix. Keanu Reeves later revealed that an early version of the screenplay imagined Matrix avatars as a different gender from their real-world counterparts in Zion. However, he said the studio wasn't prepared to embrace that concept at the time. In 1996, the Wachowskis offered the role of Neo to Will Smith. Smith later shared on his YouTube channel that he was originally considered for Neo, while Val Kilmer was expected to play Morpheus. Admitting that he didn't fully understand the film's groundbreaking concept, Smith turned down the role in favor of starring in Wild Wild West. Brad Pitt also declined the opportunity to play Neo, and Madonna passed on an undisclosed role, a decision she later admitted she regretted. Producer Joel Silver soon joined the project and became one of its strongest supporters. Even with Silver and Lorenzo Di Bonaventura backing the film, The Matrix remained a significant risk for Warner Brothers. The studio was investing around $60 million in a project directed by relatively inexperienced filmmakers who planned to use revolutionary visual effects that had never been attempted before. To clearly communicate their vision, the Wachowskis enlisted underground comic book artists Jeffrey Darrow and Steve Skroce to create an extraordinary 600-page, shot-by-shot storyboard covering the entire film. The detailed visual plan ultimately convinced Warner Brothers to move forward with production. Filming was also relocated to Australia, where the budget could stretch further. The Matrix officially became a co-production between Warner Brothers and Village Roadshow Pictures. Editor Zach Stenberg later recalled that after studio executives watched an early cut of the film's opening sequence, including Trinity's unforgettable encounter with the police and the agents, so they fully embraced the project and gave it their complete support. Pre-production: before filming began, the cast was expected to thoroughly understand the complex ideas behind The Matrix. To help them grasp the film's philosophical themes, most of the principal cast and crew were required to read French philosopher Jean Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulation. In early 1997, the Wachowskis also asked Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss to study Kevin Kelly's Out of Control, The New Biology of Machines, Social Systems, and the Economic World, along with Dylan Evans's work on evolutionary psychology, before they even read the screenplay. Moss later admitted that the preparation was challenging but helped her better understand the film's deeper concepts. As longtime fans of Hong Kong action cinema, the Wachowskis hired legendary martial arts choreographer and director Yuen Woo-ping to design the film's fight sequences. To prepare for the demanding waifu action, the cast underwent months of intensive martial arts training. Training began in October 1997 and was originally scheduled to last 4 months. Although Yuen was initially confident, he soon realized that most of the actors had little martial arts experience and would require far more preparation than expected. Rather than teaching everyone the same style, Yoon tailored the choreography to each actor's natural strengths. He built on Keanu Reeves's determination, Lawrence Fishburne's endurance, Hugo Weaving's precision, and Carrie-Anne Moss's agility and graceful movement, creating distinct fighting styles for each character. Before production began, Reeves underwent cervical spinal fusion surgery to treat serious neck and disc problems that had been affecting his balance. Despite still recovering during pre-production, he insisted on participating in training. To avoid further injury, Yoon limited him to punches and lighter techniques during the early stages. Reeves trained tirelessly and even requested extra practice sessions on his days off. However, because he was unable to perform kicks for nearly half of the training period, his character uses relatively few kicks throughout the finished film. Hugo Weaving also faced a setback after suffering an injury during training that required hip surgery before filming could continue. Filming most of The Matrix was filmed at Fox Studios in Sydney, Australia, along with various locations throughout the city. To preserve the illusion of a generic American metropolis, recognizable Sydney landmarks were intentionally avoided. The production played an important role in establishing New South Wales as a major destination for international filmmaking. Principal photography began in March 1998 and concluded in August 1998, spanning a total of 118 shooting days. A small number of scenes were also filmed at Culver Studios. Because Reeves was still recovering from neck surgery, several action scenes had to be postponed until he had healed. As a result, filming began with sequences that required minimal physical activity, including scenes set in Thomas Anderson's office, the interrogation room, and the car ride where Neo is taken to meet the Oracle. These scenes were filmed around Sydney's Martin Place and the nearby Colonial Building. For the rooftop sequence set atop a government building, the crew filmed additional footage of Neo dodging bullets as a backup in case the innovative bullet time visual effect failed to work as planned. The iconic bullet time rooftop scene itself was filmed on the roof of the Cement Corporation building on Kent Street, opposite Sussex Street. Carrie-Anne Moss performed the opening scenes featuring Trinity and completed all of her own wire stunts without a stunt double. The rooftop set used during Trinity's escape from Agent Brown had previously been built for the film Dark City, a coincidence that has often been noted because both films explore similar themes of reality and illusion. During rehearsals for the memorable lobby sequence, where Trinity runs across a wall, Moss suffered a leg injury. The injury prevented her from completing the stunt in a single take. She later recalled feeling enormous pressure during production and was deeply disappointed when she realized she could no longer perform the scene exactly as originally planned. Filming and production. The dojo set was completed well before filming began, giving the cast and crew plenty of time to prepare for the demanding action sequences. Because the fight scenes involved frequent physical contact, the actors often walked away with bruises. Keanu Reeves also faced additional challenges due to a previous injury and limited wire training experience before production. As a result, he struggled to perform the triple kick sequence to the standard he wanted, becoming frustrated with his performance. The scene was temporarily postponed and successfully filmed a few days later, with Reeves completing it in just 3 takes. To help the actors perform more naturally, fight choreographer Yoon Woo-ping adjusted the choreography and had them pull their punches during the final part of the sequence, giving it the feel of a training session. The filmmakers initially hoped to shoot the subway fight in a real subway station. However, the complexity of the wire work and action choreography made this impractical, so they built a detailed set around an existing train storage facility with real railway tracks. Filming these scenes proved physically demanding. During the moment when Neo slammed Agent Smith into the ceiling, Reeves' stunt double, Chad Stahelski, suffered multiple injuries, including broken ribs, knee injuries, and a dislocated shoulder. In another sequence, when Neo was thrown into a phone booth, a stunt performer was injured by a hydraulic pulling device. The office where Agent Smith interrogates Morpheus was also a large custom-built set. The city skyline seen through its windows was created using a massive 3-story cyclorama backdrop. The helicopter featured in the rescue sequence was a full-scale lighter-weight model suspended by wire cables and controlled by a tilting mechanism attached to the studio roof. It was even fitted with a real side-mounted minigun, modified to fire at half its normal rate of 3,000 rounds per minute. To prepare for the memorable scene in which Neo awakens inside a pod, Reeves lost around 15 pounds, 7 kilograms, and shaved his entire body to create a weak and malnourished appearance. The sequence in which Neo falls into the sewer system marked the end of the film's principal photography. According to The Art of the Matrix, at least one fully filmed scene and several shorter action moments were ultimately removed from the final version of the movie. Sound effects and music. Sound designer Dana Davis created the film's distinctive sound effects, many of which became instantly recognizable. The sharp sounds heard during the fight scenes were produced by striking thin metal rods, recording the results, and then carefully editing the audio. Even the sound of a human pod closing was built by combining nearly 50 separate sound effects into a single layered recording. The film's original score was composed by Don Davis, who drew inspiration from the recurring theme of reflections throughout the movie. Mirrors repeatedly appear in key moments, from the reflections of the red and blue pills in Morpheus' glasses to Neo watching a shattered mirror repair itself, the bending spoon, and the helicopter reflected in a skyscraper. Davis translated this visual motif into music by alternating different orchestral sections and incorporating contrapuntal techniques. His score blends orchestral, choral, and electronic synthesizer elements, with the balance shifting depending on whether humans or machines dominate a particular scene. Alongside Davis' orchestral score, the soundtrack features songs from several well-known artists, including Rammstein, Rob Dugan, Rage Against the Machine, Propellerheads, Ministry, Lunatic Calm, Deftones, Monster Magnet, The Prodigy, Rob Zombie, Meat Beat Manifesto, and Marilyn Manson, helping define the film's unforgettable atmosphere. Production design. One of the Matrix's most iconic visual elements is the flowing green code that represents the simulated world. Designer Simon Whiteley created a custom typeface using mirrored half-width Japanese kana characters, along with Latin letters and Arabic numerals. In a 2017 interview, Whiteley revealed that the inspiration came from his Japanese wife, joking that the famous Matrix code was actually made from Japanese sushi recipes. The green color itself was chosen to resemble the glow of early monochrome computer monitors. Lynn Cartwright, visual effects supervisor at Animal Logic, oversaw the creation of the opening title sequence and the overall appearance of the Matrix code, working closely with Lindsay Fleet and Justin Marshall. The visual style was heavily influenced by the opening credits of the 1995 Japanese cyberpunk film Ghost in the Shell. The iconic digital rain later became a defining symbol of the franchise, appearing in the sequels, promotional material, the official website, and the video game The Matrix: Path of Neo. Its typography even earned the runner-up award for the 1999 Jesse Garson Award in the category of in-film typography and opening title design. Production designer Owen Patterson carefully distinguished the simulated Matrix from the real world through color, architecture, and visual style. Scenes inside the Matrix were dominated by green tones and featured decaying, rigid, grid-like environments that emphasize the cold, logical nature of the artificial world. By contrast, scenes in the real world relied on blue tones, softer backgrounds, less polished hairstyles, and clothing made from more natural fabrics, creating a warmer and more human atmosphere. The hovercraft Nebuchadnezzar was intentionally designed to look worn, patched together, and functional rather than sleek or futuristic like the spaceships seen in productions such as Star Trek. Exposed wiring and mechanical components highlighted the ship as a fusion of human ingenuity and machine technology. Likewise, the pod in which Neo awakens was deliberately built to appear filthy, unsettling, and well-used. During testing, the breathing system inside the pod caused a crew member to develop hypothermia in less than 8 minutes, forcing the production team to install heating before filming could continue. Costume designer Kym Barrett used clothing to reflect each character's personality and place within the story. Thomas Anderson's office attire was intentionally designed to make him appear uncomfortable, untidy, and out of place in his corporate environment. Barrett often combined 3 different fabrics for a single costume while ensuring they remained practical for the film's demanding martial arts choreography, wire work, and upside-down stunts. For Trinity's signature outfit, Barrett experimented with different materials to see how they absorbed and reflected light before creating the now famous glossy black costume with a liquid mercury and oil slick appearance. The agents, meanwhile, were dressed in dark suits, white shirts, ties, and sunglasses to create the appearance of secret government operatives, drawing inspiration from Oliver Stone's JFK and the classic Men in Black look. The film's iconic sunglasses were specially commissioned from designer Richard Walker and manufactured by Blind Design, becoming one of the most recognizable visual trademarks of The Matrix. Visual effects. One of The Matrix's most groundbreaking achievements was its revolutionary visual effects, especially the iconic bullet time technique. To create this effect, each scene was first designed using computer models to determine the exact placement of dozens of physical cameras. The actors then performed in front of a green screen while the cameras captured images in rapid succession, each firing a fraction of a second apart. These photographs were later combined with computer-generated backgrounds, producing the signature slow-motion sequence in which the camera appears to move freely around the action. Visual effects supervisor John Gaiety credited filmmaker Kazuhiro Otomo, co-writer and director of Akira, as one of the biggest inspirations behind the technique. He also acknowledged director Michel Gondry, whose innovative music videos experimented with view morphing and creative uses of still photography. However, Gaiety explained that the team's approach was fundamentally different. Instead of filming mostly static subjects with limited camera movement, they developed a system that allowed a virtual camera to move around objects that were already in motion while presenting the action in dramatic slow motion. The Matrix is widely recognized for bringing bullet time into the mainstream. The effect lets time slow almost to a standstill while the camera appears to move through the scene at normal speed. Throughout the film, this visual style represents the character's growing ability to manipulate time and space within the Matrix itself. The idea originated with the Wachowskis, who envisioned action scenes where time slowed dramatically as the camera rapidly circled the characters. They described the concept in the screenplay, and after reading it, John Gaiety was determined to join the project. He convinced the visual effects team at Mass.Illusion to let him develop a prototype, which ultimately earned him the role of the film's visual effects supervisor. The technology behind bullet time was an advanced evolution of a traditional photography method known as time-slice photography. In the classic technique, multiple cameras are arranged around a subject and triggered simultaneously, each capturing a single still image. When these images are combined, they create the illusion of a camera moving around an object frozen in time. For The Matrix, the process became far more sophisticated. Instead of firing every camera at the same instant, each camera was triggered fractions of a second after the previous one. This allowed every image to capture a slightly different moment in the action, creating an incredibly smooth super slow motion effect. Once combined, the sequence achieved an effective frame rate of nearly 12,000 frames per second, compared with the standard 24 frames per second used in traditional filmmaking. Conventional movie cameras were positioned at both ends of the camera array to capture the normal speed action before and after the bullet time sequences. Since the ring of cameras often surrounded the actors almost completely, digital editing was used to remove any cameras that appeared within the shot. To complete the environments, visual effects artist George Borsukov built detailed 3D models of buildings using real photographs as textures, creating highly realistic digital backgrounds. These photorealistic environments were seamlessly integrated into the bullet time sequences. Advanced optical flow algorithms generated smooth transitions between the still images, while additional computer-generated frames filled the gaps, creating the illusion of a continuously orbiting camera. Many of the film's visual effects were rendered by Manex Visual Effects, using a powerful FreeBSD-based render farm. The studio also created the mechanical sentinels and other machines seen in the real world. Animal Logic produced the famous code-filled hallway and the spectacular sequence in which Agent Smith explodes at the film's climax. The film handled several complex digital compositing shots, including Neo's leap from a skyscraper and the helicopter crashing into a building. The helicopter crash combined practical effects with digital enhancements. After months of research to determine the right type of glass and explosives, the crew filmed a quarter-scale helicopter model crashing into a specially constructed glass wall. Explosives arranged in concentric circles were detonated from the center outward, creating the memorable ripple effect of shattering glass that was later enhanced with CGI. The innovations developed for The Matrix became the foundation for even more advanced techniques in The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. The team's use of real-world photographs to texture 3D environments eventually evolved into the complete digital capture of scenes, character movements, and facial performances. This led to the creation of Universal Capture, a high-resolution facial scanning system that allowed filmmakers to reproduce realistic expressions digitally and shoot scenes using entirely virtual cameras, eliminating many of the limitations of traditional filmmaking. Release home media. The Matrix was released on DVD and Laserdisc in the United States on September 21, 1999, through Warner Home Video, featuring its original 2.39:1 widescreen presentation. A separate 1.33:1 version was released in Hong Kong by Aero Home Entertainment. The film later arrived on VHS in both full-screen and widescreen editions on December 7, 1999. The movie quickly became one of the biggest home video successes of all time. It was among the first DVDs to sell more than 1 million copies in the United States, joining Titanic. By the following year, sales had surpassed 3 million copies, making it the best-selling DVD ever released at that time, a record it held until it was overtaken by Gladiator. The film also achieved remarkable success in the United Kingdom. Released on VHS and DVD on November 29, 1999, it sold more than 107,000 DVD copies within just 2 weeks, breaking the previous national sales record set by Armageddon. As the franchise continued to grow, The Matrix received several upgraded home releases. The Ultimate Matrix Collection debuted on HD DVD in 2007, followed by a Blu-ray edition in 2008. A special 10th anniversary digibook Blu-ray arrived on March 31, 2009, exactly 10 years after the film's theatrical premiere. In 2010, the trilogy was reissued as the Complete Matrix Trilogy, and in 2018 the films were released in stunning 4K HDR Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray editions. Other media. The success of The Matrix expanded far beyond the films, inspiring a variety of games, comics, and interactive experiences. The franchise includes 4 major video games. Enter the Matrix, 2003, features exclusive live-action footage created specifically for the game and tells events that occur before and during The Matrix Reloaded. The Matrix Online, 2004, continues the story after The Matrix Revolutions in a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. The Matrix, Path of Neo, 2005, allows players to relive Neo's journey throughout the trilogy, while The Matrix Awakens, 2021, developed by Epic Games using Unreal Engine 5, serves as an interactive technology showcase demonstrating the power of next-generation graphics. The universe was also expanded through the Matrix Comics, a collection of comic books and short stories created by leading writers and artists from the comics industry. Most of these stories were originally published for free on the franchise's official website before later being collected and released in 2 printed volumes, The Matrix Comics Volume 1 and The Matrix Comics Volume 2. Reception. Box office. The Matrix opened to an impressive $27.8 million during its first weekend and earned $37.4 million within its first 5 days. It set new records for both the biggest April opening weekend and the largest Easter weekend debut, surpassing Lost in Space and Indecent Proposal. These records remained unbeaten until 2002. When The Scorpion King claimed the April opening record and Panic Room took the Easter weekend title. At the time of its release, The Matrix also achieved the biggest opening weekend of any film released in 1999, outperforming Payback. It marked Keanu Reeves' biggest opening weekend since Speed in 1994. The film debuted at number 1, beating Forces of Nature, 10 Things I Hate About You, The Out-of-Towners, Analyze This, and Deadp. It stayed at the top of the North American box office for 2 consecutive weeks before being overtaken by Life. During its 4th weekend, the film briefly reclaimed the number 1 position before eventually being replaced by Entrapment. The film also performed strongly in international markets. In the United Kingdom, it earned $4.9 million during its first 3 days, making it Warner Bros.' 3rd biggest opening weekend there at the time, behind Batman Forever and Batman Robin. It was also the 3rd highest opening of the year in the UK, following A Bug's Life in Notting Hill. In Taiwan, The Matrix opened with $1.8 million, becoming the market's 3rd largest opening behind Armageddon and The Lost World. Jurassic Park. It also surpassed Lethal Weapon 4 to become Warner Bros.' biggest opening in the region. In Germany, the film earned $592,000 during its opening weekend, breaking the distributor's previous record set by Eraser. During its original theatrical run, The Matrix grossed $171.5 million in the United States and Canada and $292 million internationally, bringing its worldwide total to $463.5 million. It became the 5th highest grossing film in North America in 1999 and the year's highest grossing R-rated movie. Worldwide, it ranked as the 4th highest grossing film of the year, behind Star Wars, Episode I: The Phantom Menace, The Sixth Sense, and Toy Story 2. The film also became Warner Bros.' second highest grossing release at the time, trailing only Twister. Overall, it ranked as the third highest grossing R-rated film ever released, behind Saving Private Ryan and Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Following later re-releases, its worldwide box office total increased to $466.6 million. By 2012, it ranked as the 122nd highest grossing film of all time and remained the second highest grossing entry in the Matrix franchise after The Matrix Reloaded. Critical response: The Matrix received widespread acclaim from critics, filmmakers, and science fiction writers. It was praised for its groundbreaking visual effects, spectacular action sequences, and innovative storytelling. Many critics have since regarded it as one of the greatest science fiction films ever made, while Entertainment Weekly described it as the most influential action movie of its generation. Beyond its action and visual style, the film was also recognized for exploring complex philosophical and spiritual ideas. Philosopher William Owen and others highlighted its deeper themes surrounding reality, identity, and free will. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an 83% approval rating based on 210 reviews, with an average score of 7.7. The site's consensus praises the Wachowskis' imaginative vision, calling the film a smart blend of thrilling action and groundbreaking visual effects. On Metacritic, it earned a score of 73 out of 100 from 35 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. CinemaScore audiences awarded the film a strong R grade. It also ranked among the greatest films ever made in the 2012 Sight Sound Critics and Directors polls. Critics particularly admired the film's visual creativity and technical achievements. Philip Strick of Sight Sound praised its remarkable imagery and innovative filmmaking techniques. Roger Ebert awarded it 3 out of 4 stars, applauding its visual style and fascinating premise while feeling that the final act relied too heavily on action. Time Out praised the film's imaginative shifts between different realities, Hugo Weaving's memorable performance, and its outstanding cinematography and production design. However, the reviewer felt that its intriguing concept gradually gave way to a more conventional action film. Not every review was positive. Jonathan Rosenbaum of the Chicago Reader criticized the film for becoming overly mechanical and weighed down by its many influences after a promising first hour. Empire's Ian Nathans called Carrie-Anne Moss a standout performer and described the revolutionary bullet time effect as visually stunning. He praised the film's technical brilliance and stylish presentation, arguing that its entertaining experience outweighed any weaknesses in its complex plot. Maitland McDonough of TV Guide praised the Wachowskis' ambitious story, saying it worked effectively as a dystopian science fiction thriller, a showcase for thrilling action scenes, and a powerful metaphor encouraging people to break free from oppression. Joe Williams of The Street Louis Post-Dispatch gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, calling it one of the boldest achievements in futuristic filmmaking since Blade Runner. Andrew O'Hehir of Salon offered a more mixed perspective. Although he criticized the film for lacking emotional depth and originality, he admired the Wachowskis' bold imagination and passion for filmmaking. He concluded that, despite its flaws, The Matrix was an exciting, ambitious, and influential work that left a lasting impression. The film also received enthusiastic praise from many prominent filmmakers and science fiction creators. Cyberpunk author William Gibson described it as an innocent delight and called Neo his favorite science fiction hero. Joss Whedon praised its storytelling, structure, and thematic depth, saying it succeeds on every level viewers choose to engage with. Darren Aronofsky remarked that The Matrix combined decades of great science fiction ideas into a thrilling and accessible blockbuster. M. Night Shyamalan admired the Wachowskis' passion and attention to detail, while Simon Pegg praised its fresh visual style and intelligent use of CGI, calling it one of the coolest films he had ever seen. Quentin Tarantino included The Matrix among his 20 favorite films released between 1992 and 2009. James Cameron described it as one of the freshest science fiction movies ever made, and Christopher Nolan praised its enormous cultural impact, noting how it inspired audiences to question the very nature of reality. Awards and recognition. The Matrix earned widespread recognition during awards season. At the Academy Awards, it won Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Visual Effects, sweeping all 4 categories in which it was nominated despite competing against major franchise films such as Star Wars, Episode I: The Phantom Menace. The film also won BAFTA awards for Best Sound and Best Achievement in Special Visual Effects, while receiving additional nominations for cinematography, production design, and editing. At the 1999 Saturn Awards, The Matrix won Best Science Fiction Film and Best Director, further cementing its status as one of the year's most celebrated releases. More than 2 decades later, its legacy continued to be recognized. In February 2022, the iconic bullet time sequence was selected as one of the 5 finalists for the Academy's Oscars Cheer Moment Fan-Voted Award, ultimately finishing in 5th place. Before he becomes the one, he hears exhaustion with a name tag. That restraint is exactly why Thea transformation works. A louder actor might have made Neo's confusion entertaining, but Reeves makes it internal. Watch him in the early scenes with Morpheus. He barely knows where to put his fear. His eyes move before his body does, searching for exits, searching for a proof, searching for the trick. When Morpheus offers the red pill, Neo does not look like someone thrilled to join our rebellion. He looks like some Ionia terrified that the question haunting him might finally have an answer. That fear gives the scene its human weight. Curiosity is romantic, truth is not. Once Neo wakes in the real world, Reeves shifts the character physically before he shifts him emotionally. His body looks wrong in reality, weak, newly born, almost useless. The image of him pulled from the pod is not heroic, it is humiliating, and Reeves leans into that. He does not rush toward confidence. He lets Neo be overwhelmed, fragile, sickened by knowledge. That matters because the film's philosophy would feel cheap if Awakening looked instantly empowering. Instead, Awakening hurts. Neo's first true victory is not flying or dodging bullets, it is surviving the collapse of everything he believed. The training sequences reveal Reeves' greater strength in the role. Sincerity. I know Kung Fu could have become one of the dumbest lines in science fiction history. Somehow, impossibly, it works. Reeves says it with wonder, no to arrogance, a tiny smile, a flash of boyish disbelief. For 1 second, Neo is not a messiah or a hacker or a symbolic vessel. He is a person experiencing the impossible inside his own body. That grounded reaction lets the audience enjoy the fantasy without laughing at the premise. The movie asks for belief and Reeves gives us a doorway into it. His dojo fight with Morpheus is the first time Neo's performance becomes kinetic. At the start, Reeves moves like some Ionia imitating skill. He knows the motions, but not the meaning. Morpheus pushes him harder and the scene becomes less about combat than a self-permission. Reeves sells that gradual unlocking through rhythm, hesitation, surprise, adaptation, speed. By the time Neo starts matching Morpheus, the thrill is not just that he can fight, it is that he is beginning to suspect the cage may not be real. The body learns before the mind fully accepts it. Carrie-Anne Moss plays a Trinity as the opposite force, all control, all focus, all sharpened edges. When Neo is uncertainty, Trinity is certainty under pressure. Her performance is built from economy. She does not waste words, movement, or emotion. In the opening sequence, she instantly defines the film's action language. But the deeper work comes later in the way she watches Neo. Moss gives Trinity an emotional life that feels deliberately guarded. She has a faith in him before he has faith in himself. But she cannot afford to make that faith sentimental. Sentiment gets people killed in her world. That restraint turns the romance into something more interesting than a blockbuster decoration. Trinity does not exist to soften Neo. She studies him. The love story works because Moss refuses to play it as obvious attraction. Her affection arrives through attention. How quickly she reacts when he is in danger. How carefully she chooses what to reveal. How much feeling she buries beneath tactical calm. When she finally confesses what the Oracle told her, the moment lands because the performance has spent the entire film withholding. The emotion breaks through like pressure a cracking glass. Lawrence Fishburne's Morpheus is the gravitational center of the film. He is not the protagonist, but he controls the temperature of every scene he enters. Fishburne understands that Morpheus must be both human being and mythic function. Too casual and the prophecy collapses. Too grand and he becomes ridiculous. Fishburne walks the line by grounding every speech in absolute stillness. He does not need to prove he believes. Belief has already colonized his bones. When he says Neo is the one, the conviction is so complete that a disagreement feels almost rude. His performance also carries a quiet sadness. Morpheus is inspiring. Yes, beauty he is not light. Fishburne lets you feel the cost of a man who has built his life around faith. The crew follows him, but his certainty puts them in danger. His belief saves the people and burdens them at the same mere time. That is why his capture matters beyond plot mechanics. When Morpheus breaks under Agent Smith's interrogation, the film attacks its own spiritual foundation. If Morpheus can be cracked, then faith itself is vulnerable. Fishburne makes that vulnerability frightening because he has made Morpheus seem almost immovable. Hugo Weaving gives the film its most precise performance as Agent Smith. He could have played a blank machine. Instead, he plays a machine infected by a personality and disgusted by the infection. Every word sounds selected, polished, and poisoned. His mouth tightens around human emotion like a tar tastes bad. In the interrogation scene with the Morpheus, Smith removes his earpiece and suddenly becomes more disturbing, no less. For the first time, the system speaks personally. He hates the Matrix. He hates humans. He hates the smell of embodiment. Control has developed a revulsion, and Weaving makes that revulsion intimate. Together, these latter performances turn the Matrix from a concept into cinema. Reeves gives awakening a human face. Moss gives love discipline. Fishburne gives belief authority. Weaving gives oppression a voice. None of them play the film like Camp Vienna when the material risks theatrical excess. They commit with clean seriousness, and that commitment lets the audience commit to the leather, the sunglasses, the slow emotion. All of it could have been hollow styly without actors who understood the emotional math underneath. But even the strongest leads need a surrounding world that feels alive, and the supporting ensemble is where the Matrix adds texture to its revolution. The supporting cast of the Matrix does something quietly essential. They make here the rebellion feel lived in. Neo, Trinity, Morpheus, and Smith carry the mythic weight, but the Nebuchadnezzar crew gives the story its human texture. Without them, the film risks becoming too abstract. Chosen man, one mentor, one love interest, a Neo machine villain. The ensemble reminds you that this war existed before Neo arrived, and will continue whether he understands himself or not. These people are not decorative background rebels. They are the Christopher awakening made visible. Joe Pantoliano's Cypher is the standout because he gives the film its most uncomfortable human argument. Everyone wants to believe they would choose truth over illusion. Cypher says, "Would you, really?" Pantoliano plays him with sweaty resentment, wounded pride, and a little old-fashioned cowardice, but never as a cartoon traitor. That is what makes him dangerous. He is not seduced by power. He is seduced by comfort. His betrayal comes from exhaustion, from years of eating bad food, wearing dirty clothes, hiding underground, and being told that misery equals freedom. He looks at the truth and says, "No, thanks." Ugly. Understandable. Terrifying. The stakes in his Cypher's entire soul are on a plate. Pantoliano chews slowly, savoring not just the food, but the layer that makes the food possible. He knows that the steak is not real. He says it out aloud, but the sensory pleasure matters more to him than reality itself, and that makes him the film's dark mirror. Neo wants the truth even when it destroys him. Cypher wants a beautiful lie even when it damns everyone else. In another movie, betrayal is just our plot twist. Here it is philosophy with a napkin tucked into its collar. Gloria Foster's Oracle shifts the movie's energy theme moment she appears. After all the black leather, industrial corridors, code streams, and martial arts intensity, the Oracle's apartment feels almost shockingly ordinary. Cookies, children, warm lighting, a grandmotherly calm that disarms Neo before he realizes he is being tested. Foster plays her with perfect understatement. She does not perform a mystery by acting mysterious. She performs mystery by acting completely at home with impossible knowledge. That is far more powerful. She makes Professor feel domestic, like the fate of humanity might be discussed between checking the oven and lighting a cigarette. Here scenes also complicate the film's idea of destiny. The Oracle does not simply hand Neo confirmation. She tells him what he needs to hear, not necessarily what he wants to know. Foster's performance carries a tiny smile that feels both kind and strategic. She sees more than she says. She nudges rather than commands. That makes her a fascinating counterweight to Morpheus. He believes in prophecy like a soldier holding a flag. She treats prophecy like her psychology. Neo does not become the one because someone labels him correctly. He becomes the one because the right words push him toward the right choice. Tank, played by Marcus Chong, brings warmth to the crew in a way the film absolutely needs. He is one of the few characters born outside the Matrix, and that gives him a different emotional charge. He does not carry the same haunted quality as the freed humans. He is excited by Neo, energized by possibility, proud of Zion in a way that feels honest to innocent. Chong gives Tank a scrappier younger brother enthusiasm, especially during the training uploads. Operator could have been a purely functional role. Sit at screens, answer phones, explain danger. Tank becomes the crew's heartbeat. Dozer, played by Anthony Ray Parker, works as Tank's quieter counterpart. Their brotherly dynamic gives Thea Nebuchadnezzar something beyond mission mechanics. These people have relationships, histories, inside jokes, smaller loyalties. When Cypher murders them, Thea's scene hurts because the film has taken just enough time to make the ship feel like a home, not a comfortable home, but to a real one. Parker does not get many big showcasey moments, yet his presence gives the crew a physical grounding. He looks like someone who keeps the ship alive because survival depends on our competence, not speeches. Switch and Epoch, played by Belinda A. McCleary and Julian R. Anger, add another kind of texture, attitude. They feel like remnants of a subculture that has survived the apocalypse. Switcher especially has a clipped androgynous coolness that expands the film's identity. She does not need muka dialogue to become memorable because her presence has shape. White suit, sharper stare, zero patience. Epoch is quieter, but together they help sell the idea that Morpheus' crew is not made of generic soldiers. They are hackers, fugitives, believers, skeptics, people whose personality survived even after reality collapsed. Mouse, played by Matt Dillon, injects nervous humor and adolescent curiosity into the group. His obsession with the woman in the red dress programmer could have been throwaway comic relief, but it actually reinforces the film's core tension between desire and illusion. Mouse knows the simulation is fake, yet he still takes pleasure in its fantasies. That makes him a softer, less a corrupt echo of Cypher. The difference is that Mouse does not betray reality for pleasure. He simply reminds us that human longing does not disappear after liberation. Freedom does not make people pure. It just makes their choices honest. The ensemble chemistry works because their Wachowskis allow the crew to feel slightly messy. Morpheus followers are not polished freedom fighters giving inspirational speeches every 5 minutes. They bicker, joke, doubt, flirt, complain, and die abruptly. That abruptness matters. When the crew members are killed, the film does not pause for melodramatic farewell scenes. Death comes fast, almost rudely. The pacing tells you something brutal about this world. Resistance is fragile. People can spend years fighting the system and still be erased in seconds by one betrayal, a near unplugged cable, one missed exit. Even smaller roles outside the crew are sharp in the film's world. The agents move with eerie uniformity, but each has just enough presence to feel like our system wearing different masks. The office workers, police, guards, and the civilians trapped inside the Matrix area staged as ordinary people and potential threats at the same time. That is one of the movie's smartest ensemble ideas. Anyone still plugged in can become part of the machine. Background characters are not neutral. They are sleeping prisoners, but there are also possible weapons. The crowd itself becomes suspense. That is why the supporting cast matters so much. They widen the emotional field. Cypher give us a temptation a face. The Oracle give us a destiny a voice. Tank gives the rebellion warmth. Switch, Epoch, Dozer, and Mouse give the ship personality and a lot. Around the leads, these characters make the Matrix feel less like a thought to experiment and more like a wounded community fighting an invisible empire. But communities need worlds to inhabit, and few science fiction films have built their physical and visual environments so with this much symbolic precision. The next layer is the design. The green glow, the dead machinery, the leather, the cables, the spaces that make the illusion feel real. The physical world of the Matrix is built on one brutal idea. Comfort is suspicious. Every space in the film tells you whether a character is asleep, awake, controlled, or free. And the answer is almost never comforting. The Matrix itself looks familiar at first. Offices, apartments, hotels, city streets, government buildings, normal life. Due to the Wachowskis and production designer Owen Patterson drain that normality of far warmth until it feels like a trip pretending to be architecture. The walls are too blank. The corridors are too long. The rooms feel airless. This is not a city. It is a cage with a fluorescent lighting. The green tint became the film's visual signature. But it is not just a cooler cyberpunk filter. It makes the simulated world feel contaminated, like reality has been soaked in old computer monitors. That choice is devastatingly simple. When we are inside the Matrix, The image here itself feels processed. Human skin looks slightly wrong. White walls look sick. Shadows carry a digital bruise. The audience may not consciously read every frame as artificial, but the bojo understands. Something is off. The world is recognizable, yet poisoned. That is a production design working with color as a psychology. The real world, by contrast, is not visually free in any glamorous sense. It is ugly, wet, metallic, industrial. The Nebuchadnezzar looks less like a heroic spaceship and more like a machine that has survived too many wars and too many repairs. Exposed wires, worn metal, cramped sleeping spaces, brutal lighting. Nothing is clean unless survival requires it. That design choice keeps the movie honest. Freedom does not look pretty here. Freedom looks cold, uncomfortable, and patched together from whatever humanity could salvage after losing the planet. The lie has style. The truth has rust. That contrast gives the film one of its strongest thematic attentions. Inside the Matrix, characters wear sleek black coats, sunglasses, polished boots, and impossible cool. Outside, they wear ragged sweaters and distressed clothes that look closer to prison garments or medical recovery wear. Costume designer Kym Barrett understood the split perfectly. The simulated self becomes an idealized projection. I chose an identity. The real self is so exposed, vulnerable, almost stripped of our performance. Neo's transformation is partly a philosophical, partly sartorial. Thomas Anderson begins in a corporate costume he did not choose, then becomes Neo in a costume that expresses control over his own image. The sunglasses deserve special attention because they became iconic almost instantly, but their function is deeper than style. In The Matrix, glasses create distance. They hide the eyes, flatten emotion, and make characters look like avatars before mainstream culture had the vocabulary for that idea. Morpheus's tiny mirrored lenses turn him into a priest of hidden knowledge. Trinity's narrow frames sharpen her face into a weapon. Neo's glasses arrive fully only when he begins to understand who he is. The agent's glasses are different, uniform, bureaucratic, dehumanizing. Same accessory, opposite meaning. Identity for the rebels, erasure for the system. The overseer spaces are some of the film's most underrated design work. Neo's workplace here is not exaggerated dystopia. That would be too easy. It is painfully ordinary. Cubicles, glass partitions, Beijing authority. A boss speaking in corporate rhythm about punctuality and discipline. The horror is not that the office looks monstrous. The horror is that it does not. The Matrix controls people partly by making captivity feel like routine. Sit here, type this, arrive on time. Accept the hierarchy. The film turns a late 90s corporate blandness into existential horror without needing to decorate it with skulls. The hotel and apartment interiors push the noir influence harder. Peeling walls, narrower staircases, old doors, rooms that feel abandoned before the characters enter them. The heart of the city hotel, where Trinity's opening escape unfolds, feels like a forgotten corner of a fake world. Decay matters. Simulations usually suggest perfection, but this Neo contains grime, age, imperfection. Because a convincing prison has to imitate life's messiness. The Matrix is not a shiny utopia. It is a worn-down version of the late 20th century. Familiar enough that people never question it. That is scarier. Then there are the pods, the film's most horrifying piece of world building. The human farms reveal turns the bodja into infrastructure. People are not citizens, workers, or even prisoners in the conventional sense. They are batteries, harvested in endless hours, plugged into a system that feeds them dreams while extracting life. Their design is biological and industrial at once. Flesh connected to cables. Wamba imagery corrupted into machinery. Neo's birth from the pod is disgusting for a reason. Awakening is not a clean enlightenment metaphor. It is a violent extraction from a system that raised you only to consume you. The Nebuchadnezzar's interior depends on that womb-like imagery in a different direction. It is cramped, dark, and protective. A fragile body moving through a machine-controlled territory. Its operator station becomes the nervous system of the crew, translating greener code into survivable information. The chairs where rebels plug back into the Matrix are especially clever design objects. Half dentist chair, half execution device, half religious altar. Yes, three halves. That is how overloaded they feel. Every time Samionia sits down, the film turns technology into ritual. The body is vulnerable, the mind enters a combat, and trust becomes literal survival. What holds all of this together is restraint. The design is highly stylized, but it never feels random. Every surface belongs to the film's essential argument. The Matrix seduces us through recognizable order. The real world repels through painful authenticity. Costumes show chosen identity versus imposed identity. Props turn technology into faith, escape, addiction, or control, depending on what uses them. The red and blue pills are tiny, almost absurdly simple objects, and yet they carry the entire movie's moral universe in two colors. That is great design, a philosophy you can hold between your fingers. The visual craftsmanship of the Matrix did more than create an aesthetic. It created a grammar. After 1999, black leather, green code, mirrored sunglasses, and industrial gloom became a shorthand for digital rebellion. But the reason imitators often felt shallow is because they copied their surfaces without the system underneath. In The Matrix, design is not decoration, it is argument. Every room asks whether you are free. Every costume asks who you think you are. Every cable asks what owns your body. And once the world has been built with that much intention, the camera has to move through it with equal precision. The next layer is cinematography, theater framing, movement, lighting, and bullet-time invention that made the impossibly feel physical. The cinematography of The Matrix had an impossible job. It had to photograph a world that looked real enough to trap humanity, beautiful artificial enough that audiences could eventually believe it was code. Bill Pope, working with the Wachowskis, solved that problem through control. Not just pretty images, controlled images. The frame often feels measured, locked, and geometrically suspicious, as if the camera itself is obeying hidden software. Even when the film explodes into action, the visual language keeps asking the same question. Are we watching reality, or are we watching our system pretending to be reality? In The Matrix, the camera often treats a space like a puzzle box. Hallways stretch, rooms feel flattened. Characters stand in compositions that emphasize symmetry, distance, and entrapment. Neo's office escape is our perfect example. The camera keeps him small against corporate architecture, trapped between glass cubicles, windows, and vertical drops. The scene is not physically violent, but it is visually suffocating. Reeves clings to Thea outside of the building while Morpheus guides him through a phone, and suddenly the city itself becomes a prison wall. No monster needed, just height, glass, and panic. The lighting does something equally clever. The Matrix is not darker in the traditional noir sense. Its eyes are illuminated in a way that feels unhealthy. Office fluorescence, greenish interiors, hard reflections, glossier surfaces. Light does not liberate the image. It exposes the artificiality of it. Faces can look waxy, rooms sterile, shadows slightly metallic. That sick digital glow became one of the film's most recognizable signatures. Due to its deeper power is psychological. The audience feels the simulation before the story fully explains it. The image has a fever. Outside the simulation, the cinematography shifts into a colder, harsher physicality. The Nebuchadnezzar scenes are cramped and textural, filled with sweat, metal, cables, and low practical light. The camera has less slickness there, more bodily weight. You can almost feel the air getting stale. That contrast keeps the real world from becoming heroic fantasy. Freedom is not framed as beautiful escape. It is framed as survival under pressure. The cinematography refuses to flatter reality just because it is true. Truth looks ugly. The live photograph is better. That is one of the film's sharpest visual jokes. Then comes bullet time, the technique that kicked down the door of popular cinema. The effect freezes or slows a memento while the camera appears to move around the action. Most famously when Neo bends backward as bullets ripple past him. Technically, it involved arrays of still cameras firing in sequence combined with digital interpolation and visual effects. The reason it works is not the technology alone. Plenty of effects agent gimmicks. Bullet time became iconic because it expressed the premise in one visual sentence. The rules of this world can be seen, slowed, studied, and eventually broken. The rooftop bullet dodge scene is still thrilling because it arrives before Neo fully controls the system. He does the impossible, but not gracefully. Reeves bends, strains, loses balance, and gets clipped. That imperfection matters. The cinematography makes the moment godlike. The performance keeps it human. The camera circles him like reality is being audited frame by frame. For a few seconds, cinema itself behaves like code. Time becomes editable. Space becomes elastic. Audience jaws drop in 1999 because the effect was new, Beauty the moment endured because form and meaning were welded together. Action cinematography in The Matrix also borrows heavily from Hong Kong cinema, especially through the influence of fight choreography in whipping. The Wachowskis and Bope avoid the latter Hollywood habit of chopping fights into visual confetti. They let bodies stay readable. Punches, kicks, blocks, and falls have shape. The dojo fight works because the camera respects movement, wide enough to see technique, closely enough to feel impact. The rhythm escalates without losing geography. You understand where Morpheus stands, where Neo moves, and how the space changes as Neo begins to believe. The lobby shootout is pure controlled chaos. Marble explodes, shell casings rain down, bodies cartwheel through smoke. The camera tracks, pauses, glides, and punches in with almost musical precision. What makes the sequence great too is its clarity. Every destructive beat has visual punctuation. Columns chip away, guns empty, Trinity flips off the walls, Neo moves with growing confidence. The sequence could have been a noise. Instead, it becomes choreography between camera, bodies, debris, and a sound. Violence turns architectural. The building is not just a location, it is an instrument being played until it breaks. Pope's cinematography also understands a stillness. Morpheus and Neo sitting across from each other, the Oracle watching Neo in her kitchen, Smith leaning close during interrogation. These scenes are not visually passive. The camera holds faces long enough for belief, doubt, manipulation, and fear to surface. In our movie famous for technical spectacle, the quiet framing does a lot of emotional heavy lifting. The Wachowskis know when to move the camera and when to let a face become the battleground. That balance prevents the film from becoming a demo reel. The compositional use of reflections, screens, and lens deepens the film's obsession with a mediated reality. Sunglasses reflect rooms back at us. Computer monitors become portals. The liquid mirror before Neo's awakening turns self-recognition into body horror. Again and again, the cinematography refuses direct reality. We see through glass, code, screens, surveillance, reflections. The image itself becomes untrustworthy. That is not decoration. That is the theme invading the camera. What makes the visual execution of The Matrix so durable is that its innovation never floats free from story. Bullet time is not there merely because it looks cool, though it absolutely does. Green light is not there merely because it brands the movie, though it absolutely did. The framing, lighting, movement, and effects all serve the same core idea. Reality is a construct, and cinema is the perfect medium to prove it. A movie screen is already a fake world we agree to believe in. The Matrix weaponizes that agreement. It uses a cinematography to make us feel the seduction of illusion and the shock of seeing through it. By the end, when Neo looks at the Matrix and sees a code instead of walls, the film's visual language completes its evolution. The camera no longer simply observes the illusion. It reveals the structure beneath the illusion. That is why the climax feels earned. The cinematography has been training us from the beginning, teaching us to distrust surfaces, to notice systems, to understand motion as belief. Beauty sight is only half the spell. The sound of the Matrix, its industrial pulse, its silence, its electronic pressure, its explosive mix of score and noise is what makes the digital prison vibrate in your bones. The sound of the Matrix does not simply accompany the image. It attacks it, infects it, and sometimes explains it before the dialogue can. This is our film where audio has to sell multiple realities at once. The clean lie of the Matrix, the rusted truth of the real world, the spiritual charge of Neo's awakening, and the mechanical violence of a system that treats human beings as our hardware. Composer Don Davis and the sound team build a sonic landscape that feels half orchestra, half circuit board. Not music floating over science fiction, music being processed through the same machine that controls the characters. Don Davis's score is one of the film's secret weapons because it refuses to become a simple heroic theme machine. There is no easy, hummable superhero melody carrying Neo from confusion to triumph. Instead, Davis writes music full of tension, brass stabs, sharper strings, choral shadows, and unstable rhythms. The score often feels like a tie is counting, calculating, assembling itself in real time. That fits the movie perfectly. The world is mathematical, reality is code, so theme music cannot simply swell emotionally. It has to sound like structure under pressure. Listen to the way the score behaves around Morpheus. His scenes often carry a ritual weight. The music does not just say, "Here is the mentor." It says, Here is a man carrying a religion through a war zone. During the red pill sequence, the soundscape begins to distort with Neo's perception. The room grows stranger. The mirror liquefies. Reality stops behaving. Davis's music and the surrounding sound design merge until you cannot cleanly separate score from sensation. That is exactly right. Neo is not hearing a soundtrack. He is experiencing the collapse of his world. The sound design of the Matrix itself is sharper, cleaner, more pressurized than the real world. Phones ring like lifelines and threats at the same time. Computer keys clatter with conspiratorial urgency. Agents' footsteps feel too controlled, too heavy with purpose. Gunshots crack with almost surgical violence. Inside the simulation, sounds often arrive with exaggerated clarity, as though the world is being rendered for maximum sensory persuasion. The Matrix wants to feel real, so every noise has confidence. Every door slam, every elevator ding, every impact says, I believe this. The real world sounds different, dirtier, wetter, more fragile. The Nebuchadnezzar hums, groans, breathes, and rattles like a wounded animal made of metal. Cables connect with ugly physical snaps. Hovercraft systems pulse beneath the conversations. Nothing sounds smoother because nothing in that world is smooth. The soundscape makes freedom feel exhausting. You hear the labor of staying alive. That is a crucial contrast. The lie is sonically polished, while the truth is full of friction. The ear understands the bargain before the mind finishes processing it. The action scenes use sound with almost percussive intelligence. The lobby shootout is not just loud, it is orchestrated destruction. Guns fire in a rhythm, shell casings hit the floor like a metallic rain, marble chunks explode, bodies thud, boots slide, fabric snaps. The sequence becomes a brutal kind of music, a duet between choreography and demolition. Silence appears in tiny pockets, then gets shattered. That push-pull is why the scene still feels alive. Constant noise becomes numbing. The Matrix knows when to punch, when to pause, and when to let one sound slice through the chaos. Bullet time also depends heavily on audio. Visually, Neo bending away from bullets is unforgettable. But the sound is what makes the memento feel physical. The bullets do not merely pass, they cut through air with warped liquid pressure. Time slows, and the sound stretches with it, bending perception. The effect tells us that reality's rulers are not just being broken visually, they are being warped at the sensory level. The audience does not just see time manipulated, we hear time lose its normal shape. The film also uses silence as a pressure chamber. Before major choices, the sound often narrows. Neo waiting, Morpheus watching, Trinity holding back emotion. The absence of noise becomes active, almost threatening. In a movie packed with gunfire, electronics, and industrial atmosphere, these quieter moments matter because they let belief become audible. You can feel characters thinking. You can feel fear entering the room. Silence here is never empty. It is loaded. The licensed music gives the film another layer of late 90s identity. The soundtrack pulls from industrial rock, electronic music, metal, and alternative culture, creating a sonic attitude that matches the costumes and hacker aesthetic. Rage Against the Machine's Wake Up closing the film is almost too perfect. Not subtle, not polite, not trying to be. After Neo announces a new possibility to the machines, that track detonates like the movie kicking open the exit door. The ending does not drift out on a mystical wonder. It punches the audience awake. What makes the audio landscape so effective is the way it keeps blurring categories. Is this music or machinery, score or warning signal, human emotion or system noise? The film thrives in that uncertainty. The Matrix is a world where bodies are plugged into technology. So naturally, the soundtrack feels plugged in. 2. Orchestral grandeur collides with electronic dread. Industrial noisy becomes atmosphere. A ringing phonia becomes salvation. A modem-like pulse becomes suspense. Every sound has a job, and the job is not merely immersion. The sound teaches us the rules of the world. It tells us when the system is near, when reality is unstable, when violence is about to rupture the frame, when Neo is beginning to perceive more than ordinary human limits. Davis' score gives the film intellect and spiritual force, while the sound design gives it muscle, texture, and threat. Together, they make The Matrix feel less like a movie you watch and more like a signal you receive. By this stage, the artistry behind The Matrix looks almost impossibly coordinated. Writing, casting, performance, design, cinematography, music, and Sandler pushing the same idea from different angles. But none of that harmony came easily. Behind the finished film was a demanding production filled with a physical training, technical risk, a studio doubt, injury, choreography, and a level of preparation most blockbusters would never attempt. The next layer to the production journey, the human grinder behind the digital myth. The production journey behind The Matrix was not a casual blockbuster shoot where actors wore sunglasses, posed against a green code, and let computers do the rest. That misunderstanding misses the entire physical achievement of the film. The finished movie feels digital, due to its making was intensely bodily. Months of martial arts training, wire work, bruises, choreography, camera experiments, and a performer's learning to move in our language Hollywood action had rarely demanded from its stars. The Matrix might be a simulation, but making The Matrix hurt. The Wachowskis wanted action influenced by Hong Kong cinema, not the usual American style where quick cuts hide limited movement. That meant bringing in a legendary fight choreographer Wina Wuping, whose work with Jackie Chan, Jet Li, and Hong Kong martial arts cinema gave him the exact vocabulary the film needed. His presence changed the physical expectations. Actors were not simply asked to throw a convincing punch for half a second. They had to train, repeat, stretch, kick, fall, and hold shapes that could survive longer takes. The camera was going to see their bodies. No hiding. Keanu Reeves' commitment becomes even more impressive when you remember he was dealing with neck surgery and physical limitations during preparation. That could have derailed the entire approach. Instead, the choreography adapted around what he could safely do while still making Neo's progression believable. In a strange way, that limitation might have helped the performance. Neo's earlier stiffness does not feel like failure. It feels like a man whose body has not yet learned the truth. As the film progresses, Reeves' movement opens up. The actor's physical journey and the character's spiritual journey start speaking the same language. Carrie-Anne Moss also paid a serious price for Trinity's precision. Hero opening kick, the wall runs, the wire-assisted motion, all of it had to look effortless, which usually means a tar was anything but. Trinity's action style depends on cleaner lines and total control, so even small errors would be obvious. Moss gives the impression of someone who has compressed fear into discipline. That kind of performance does not come here from costume alone. It comes from repetition until the body stops asking permission. She had to make impossible movement feel like personality. Lawrence Fishburne's training had a different demand. Morpheus does not fight like Neo or Trinity. He fights with authority. In the dojo sequence, Fishburne's movements need weight, patience, and a command. He is not trying to overpower Neo emotionally. He is trying to teach him physically. The choreography becomes a lesson plan. Every block and strike here says, stop thinking like a prisoner. Fishburne's calm during those fights is crucial because Morpheus has to seem ahead of Neo not only in knowledge, beauty and bodily belief. He already knows the rules can bend. The technical side of production was just as ambitious. Bullet time required careful planning, camera raise, digital stitching, and our willingness to build shots, almost like engineering diagrams. This was not fixed later filmmaking. The effect had to be imagined precisely before the actor moved, before the cameras fired, before the digital artists could blend the pieces into a near impossible motion. That is why the bullet time shots still have impact. They feel designed, not generated. There is a physical event underneath the illusion, and the audience senses that. The lobby shootout is another example of our preparation creating freedom. On screen, it looks like chaos, gunfire, shattered columns, bodies flying, smoke filling the frame. In production terms, chaos like that has to be brutally organized. Squibs, stunted timing, camera movement, actor marks, debris, weapon handling, and safety will have to lock together. The sequence here works because everyone involved understands rhythm. It is not random destruction. It is destruction choreographed as spectacle, and that requires discipline bordering on madness. Sydney, Australia, became the film's production base, which helped give The Matrix its slightly displaced urban identity. The city does not read as one specific American metropolis, and that ambiguity helps The Matrix feel universal. It is everywhere and nowhere. Streets, rooftops, government buildings, and anonymous corporate spaces become pieces of a synthetic city. The location choice also allowed the production to build and control environments with a level of focus that might have been harder inside a more recognizable Hollywood urban landscape. The world feels familiar, A but not comfortably placeable. Perfect. The Wachowskis' directing style rely either heavily on pre-visualization and planning. That matters because The Matrix is full of images that feel comic book precise. Trinity frozen mid-kick, a Neo waking in the pod, Morpheus wearing a 2 pills, Neo and Trinity entering the lobby armed like mythic avatars of our rebellion. These are not merely scenes. They are panels burned into popular memory. The directors understood the power of the iconic frame. A great blockbuster gives you moments so you can recognize in silhouette. The Matrix gives you dozens. There is also something fascinating about the studio risk. Warner Brothers was backing a film that combined a philosophy, religion, leather fetish aesthetics, cyberpunk, gunplay, martial arts, and a fairly grim vision of our humanity's future. That is not the safest recipe. The reason the gamble worked is that the Wachowskis wrapped the difficult ideas inside undeniable cinematic pleasures. You can enjoy The Matrix as action. You can enjoy it as science fiction. You can't enjoy it as myth, philosophy, style, or our paranoid fantasy. The production had to serve all three modes at once. Miss one and the wholly structured tilts. What emerges from the behind-the-scenes story is a simply truth. The Matrix looks effortless because it was obsessively prepared. The cast trained until fantasy hard muscle. The stunt team turned belief into choreography. The visual effects team turned either philosophical perception into a camera effect. The designers, cinematographer, editors, and sound artists all work either toward the same illusion, that reality itself could be hacked. That kind of unity does not happen by accident. It happens when a production understands exactly what movie it is making. And once that movie was finished, the next question was whether audiences would actually follow it. A dense, AR-rated science fiction film from a relatively new director's could have disappeared as a cult curiosity. Instead, it became one of the defining commercial surprises of 1999, proving that audiences were ready for something stranger, smarter, and sharper than the average late 90s blockbuster machine expected. The next layer is the box office, the numbers, the gamble, and the moment. The Matrix stopped being a risky experimenter and became a phenomenon. Commercially, The Matrix was the kind of movie studios say they want, but are often terrified to release. Original, a stylish, adult skewing, idea-heavy, and are not based on a toy, comic book, sequel, or instantly explainable brand. That matters. In 1999, audiences were surrounded by major event films with easier marketing hooks, especially with Star Wars Episode I: The Phantom Menace, waiting to dominate the cultural conversation a few weeks later. The Matrix did not have nostalgia as armor. It had a question, a look, and a trailer that basically dared people to ask what they had just seen. The opening weekend proved the gamble had teeth. The film opened in North America with about $27.8 million from 2,849 theaters. A strong launch for an R-rated science fiction action film with heart of franchise recognition. That number does not sound earth-shattering in today's so inflated blockbuster economy. Beauty context is everything. This was not a four-quadrant familiar film. This was leather, guns, a philosophy, body horror, religious symbolism, and Keanu Reeves waking up naked in a human battery farm. $27.8 million opening meant the marketing had done its job. It sold mystery without over-explaining the machine. What really separates The Matrix from a disposable opening weekend hits is its staying power. The numbers lists its domestic legs at 649. Meaning its total domestic gross was about 6.5 times its biggest weekend. That is the box office equivalent of word of mouth catching fire. Some movies open big because people are curious, then vanish because their curiosity was stronger than the film. The Matrix did the opposite. It opened well, then kept recruiting people. Friends told friends. Viewers returned either to decode it. Action fans came for the fights. Sci-fi fans came for the concept. Everyone came out talking about bullet time. Its domestic total reached at about $177.6 million, making it one of the highest grossing films of 1999 in North America. That placement is important because 1999 was not a weak year. This was the year of The Sixth Sense, A Toy Story 2, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, and The Phantom Menace. The Matrix was competing in our crowded, culturally loud marketplace, and it still carved out its own territory. Not by being the biggest, by being the sharpest. It became the film people quoted, imitated, argued about, and tried to explain over bad coffee at midnight. Worldwide, The movie became a major heater with reported totals commonly placed either above $460 million against a production budget often cited around $63-65 million. That ratio changed the conversation. Before release, The Matrix was a risk. After release, it was an asset, a franchise seed, and proof that our audiences would reward originality when originality came packaged with an oomph for cinematic force. The money did not simply say, people like this. It said, people will pay for difficult ideas if the movie makes those ideas feel alive. The international performance also matters because The Matrix spoke in images that traveled. The story contains plenty of English language exposition, yes, but its most powerful selling points were visual and physical. Black coats, impossible kicks, a green code, slow motion bullets, a mirrored sunglasses, a bodies moving through space like thought becoming action. That kind of iconography crosses borders faster than dialogue. A viewer did not need to catch every philosophical reference to understand the thrill of Neo stopping bullets. The film's commercial power came from that balance, intellectually dense, a visually immediate. Then came the home media afterlife, and this is where The Matrix became even bigger than its theatrical numbers. Wired reported that it became the first DVD to sell more than 3 million copies in the United States. That detail is huge. DVD was changing how people watch movies at home, and The Matrix was a practically engineered free-player culture. Viewers wanted to pause the action, examine the effects, replay the lobby shootout, freeze the code, study the philosophy, and show friends the scenes that melted their brains. VHS was for watching, DVD was for dissecting. The Matrix arrived at exactly the right moment for that shift. The film's commercial impact also changed Keanu Reeves' career. He was already famous, but The Matrix gave him a new screen identity. Not just the charming action lead from Speed, but a modern mythic figure built from stillness, melancholy, and sudden physical grace. It also elevated the Wachowskis from promising filmmakers to major pop culture architects. Warner Brothers did not just get a hit, it got a universe, sequels, animation, video games, comics, a merchandise, parody, fashion influence. Suddenly The Matrix was not one movie anymore. It was a system of its own. And that is the delicious irony. A film about escaping systems became an era of the most profitable systems Warner Brothers had. The red pill became a marketing object. Bullet time became an advertising language. Sunglasses and leather coats became mere Halloween shorthand. The movie as anti-corporate, anti-control energy was absorbed into corporate franchisee machinery almost instantly. That does not make the achievement hollow. It makes it very 1999. Rebellion became product. Product spread the rebellion. Messy? Absolutely. Fascinating? Even more so. The box office story of The Matrix is not just our story of numbers. It is a story of our audience appetite being underestimated. Viewers did not reject the film because it was strange. They embraced it because the strangeness felt necessary. The commercial success proved that our blockbuster could be sleek and philosophical, violent and spiritual, technically groundbreaking and emotionally direct. But money is only one kind of verdict. The next test was our critical response. The reviews, the awards, the debates. And the moment critics realized they were not just watching another sci-fi action film, but the arrival of a new cinematic language. Critical reception for The Matrix was enthusiastic, but not as simple as everyone instantly understood a masterpiece. That would be too clean. The more interesting truth is that the critics recognized its force immediately, even when some resisted its final shape. The film arrived as a blast of style, speed, and conceptual nerve. And even skeptical reviews had to admit the obvious. Something had shifted. Rotten Tomatoes' current critical consensus calls it a smartly crafted mix of spectacular action and groundbreaking special effects, while Metacritic places it in the generally favorable range. That feels right. The first response was admiration with a few raised eyebrows. The long-term response became reverence. Roger Ebert's original review captures that split beautifully. He praised the film as visually dazzling and full of kinetic excitement, but he felt it retreated into formula once the guns came out. That critique is not foolish. It is the exact tension at the center of the movie's reception. Is The Matrix a profound science fiction text that uses action as metaphor, or is it an action film wearing philosophy like a very expensive coat? The answer, honestly, I see yes. Both. That hybrid identity is why the film confused some traditional critical categories. The Academy response was unusually decisive for a genre film. At the 72nd Academy Awards, The Matrix won all 4 Oscars for which it was nominated: film editing, sound effects editing, and visual effects. That sweep matters because it beat the year's great pre-sold spectacle, Star Wars, Episode I: The Phantom Menace. In the technical arena where many expected the Lucasfilm to dominate, the message was allowed. The industry saw The Matrix not merely as a cool hit, but as a craft to break through. The machines had beaten the machines. Delicious. Those Oscars also reveal what early institutions are valued most. They did not nominate the Wachowskis for directing or screenplay, and the film was nowhere near Best Picture. Genre bias was still very real, but the technical branches could know to ignore what was happening on screen and in the mix. Editing gave the action shape. Sound made the digital world tactile. Visual effects turned philosophy into our camera movement. The film's awardist profile basically says, "We may not be ready to call this high art, but we cannot deny that cinema just learned our new trick." A audience response was even more intense because viewers did not experience The Matrix as a respectable technical achievement. They experienced it as initiation. People left the theater asking whether they were awake. That sounds dramatic, but the film genuinely entered everyday language. Red pill, blue pill, there is no spoon, glitch in the Matrix. DC phrases escaped the screen and became mere cultural tools. Some were playful, some became philosophical shorthand. Some later got dragged into uglier political corners far from the film's original complexity, but that is cultural impact. The work leaves home and starts living lives its creators cannot fully control. The film also landed at the perfect moment for online fandom. Message boards, early fan sites, the culture, philosophy explainers, and frame-by-frame breakdowns helped turn The Matrix into a puzzle box people wanted to reopen. This was not passive popularity. It encouraged decoding. Viewers debated the oracle, prophecy, a simulation theory, religious symbolism, a Buddhist and Gnostic echoes, cyberpunk or lineage, and whether Neo's power represented destiny or choice. The movie rewarded obsession without requiring it. You could enjoy the lobby shootout and leave happy, or you could spend a month arguing about free will. Both doors were open. Its influence on other films and media was immediate, sometimes painfully obvious. After The Matrix, action cinema developed a serious bullet time addiction. Commercials copied it. Music videos copied it. Video games copied it. Parodies copied it until the image of someone leaning backward from a slow-motion bullets became almost a joke. That is the curse of innovation. If you create a new visual grammar, an imitation can make the original look familiar in retrospect, but returning to the film itself restores the shock. The effect is not random decoration. It is the story's worldview made visible. Critically, the movie's reputation only grew as the decades passed. In 2012, the Library of Congress selected The Matrix for the National Film Registry, recognizing it as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. That kind of preservation is more than nostalgia. It marks the film as part of America's cinematic memory. A movie that once looked like a dangerous studio gamble had become canon. Cyberpunk leather and a kung fu philosophy had entered the museum. Somehow, impossibly, that feels so exactly right. The later sequels complicated the conversation, of course. Reloaded and Revolutions divide audiences hard, and that division is sometimes spilled backward onto the original. But if anything, the messiness of the franchise made the 1999 film look even cleaner. The first Matrix has a rare balance. Enough mystery to feel deep, enough for clarity to feel satisfying, enough for action to thrill, enough restraint to avoid drowning in its own mythology. The sequels expanded the universe. The original perfected the doorway. What makes the cultural response so fascinating is that different audiences acclaimed different movies. Action fans claimed the fights. Tech culture claimed the simulation. Philosophers claimed the reality of problem. Teenagers claimed the quotes. Filmmakers claimed the visual effects. Conspiracy-minded viewers claimed the awakening metaphor. Trans readings later added an author a powerful layer to the film's legacy. Especially as Lana and Lily Wachowski's own public journeys reshaped how many viewers understood identity, a transformation, and the pain of living inside imposed systems. The movie kept changing because the world around it kept changing. That is the final proof of its reception. The Matrix did not simply get good reviews and win awards. It became mere usable. People have used it to talk about technology, capitalism, identity, alienation, gender, control, faith, and a choice. Some uses were sharp, some were shallow, some were wildly distorted. View to dead myths do not get misused. Only a living myths do. And by the time theatrical dust settled, The Matrix had become more than a hit, more than an Oscar-winning technical landmark, more than a late 90s style object. It had become a modern myth about waking up. And myths demand one final question. Once you wake up, what do you do with the truth? The final power of The Matrix is that its central metaphor refuses to stay still. At first, it looks like a story about a technology. Machines have trapped a humanity inside a simulation. Then it becomes a story about a perception. The world you trust may be constructed. Then it becomes a story about control. Systems do not need to crush you openly if they can teach you to mistake the cage for life. And finally, deepest of all, it becomes our story about identity. Neo is not simply discovering where he lives. He is discovering who he is allowed to become here once the rules stop feeling permanent. That is why the red pill, blue pill choice became so culturally explosive. It is visually simple, almost childlike. Two colors, two futures, one hand extended. But the choice contains the whole film. Come to or truth, sleep or awakening, safety or our freedom. The genius is that the movie does not pretend truth will make you happy. The red pill leads Neo to horror, Theopod, the machines, the ruined sky, the knowledge that his entire life has been managed by a system that never cared whether he was fulfilled, only whether he was useful. Enlightenment does not arrive as sunlight. It arrives covered in slime. The film's religious imagery is everywhere, but it works because a tie is woven into character rather than a dropped like homework. Neo is the chosen figure. Morpheus, the believer. Trinity, the name that turns love into doctrine. The oracle, a prophet who speaks through a domestic warmth. And Cypher, a Judas figure selling out the resistance for the pleasures of the old world. Subtle? Not really. Effective? Absolutely. The Wachowskis are not afraid of mythic obviousness because they understand that myths survive through clarity. The film does not whisper its symbols, it engraves them. But The Matrix is smarter than a simply chosen one fantasy. The movie keeps suppressing on the tension between destiny and choice. Morpheus believes Neo is the one. The Oracle tells Neo he is not, or at least lets him believe he is not. Trinity believes because the Oracle gave her a prophecy tied to love. Neo becomes fully powerful after choosing to save Morpheus, then after choosing to stand rather than run. That matters. The prophecy does not remove agency, it creates pressure. Neo is not handed identity like our certificate. He grows into it through action, sacrifice, death, and return. Agent Smith gives the film its darkest philosophical counterweight. He is not merely a security program. He is the voice of a system that hates the very humanity it depends on. His speech to Morpheus about humans as a virus is chilling because it flips the usual machine logic. Smith does not sound like he cold deficiency. He sounds disgusted. He wants out. That makes him a strange mirror of Neo. Both are trapped inside the Matrix. Both want to escape, both to exceed their original function. One moves toward liberation, the other moves toward annihilation. Same prison, opposite awakenings. The film's social commentary also cuts deeper than a technology bad. Technology in The Matrix is never one thing. It enslaves, but it also frees. The machines use simulation to control humanity, but the rebels use the hacking, phones, ships, screens, and uploaded knowledge to fight back. The issue is not technology itself. The issue is who controls the system, who benefits from it, and who is reduced to fuel. That is why the movie still feels alive in an age of algorithms, surveillance capitalism, curated identities, and digital environments designed to hold attention. The Matrix is not just a computer world. It is any system that profits when the people stop asking questions. Visually and emotionally, the film is also about the body that can't get lost beneath the philosophy. Bodies are grown, plugged in, trained, injured, shot, resurrected. The mind may bend the Matrix, but the body pays the price. Neo's awakening begins with physical violation. The rebels' freedom is sustained through hunger, discomfort, scars, and danger. Even the action scenes are built around embodiment, martial arts, breath, balance, pain. The film says consciousness matters. View to it never lets consciousness float away into abstraction. Belief must enter the muscles. Freedom has to be practiced. Modern readings have added even more resonance to the film's identity themes. Seen through a trans lens, The Matrix becomes a story about living under an imposed name, sensing that the world's categories are false, finding our chosen identity, and risking everything to become real. That interpretation is not the only way to read the film, but it is powerfuler because the movie is obsessed with the transformation from the inside out. Thomas Anderson is a name assigned by the system. Neo is a name chosen in our resistance. The difference is not cosmetic. It is existential. As a piece of genre filmmaking, The Matrix changed the grammar of action cinema. Bullet time became the obvious legacy. But the deeper influence was structural, the fusion of philosophical world-building with clean blockbuster momentum. It proved that audiences could handle a dense mythology if the emotional spine was strong. It proved that action could express a thought. It proved that style could be more than decoration when every coat, lens, gig, and line of code served the same central argument. Many films copied the surface. Few matched the alignment. Is it flawless? Number. Some exposition aligns heavily. Some dialogue walks right up to the edge of self-parody. The gender politics of Trinity's role, while stronger than many 90s action films, still ultimately tie hero narrative purpose too tightly to Neo's awakening. And the final act, depending on taste, can feel like it chooses gunfire over the full philosophical complexity it has spent the film building. But these flaws do not weaken the movie's achievement so much as reveal the pressure it is under. The Matrix is trying to be myth, action film, cyberpunk thriller, spiritual allegory, a romance, and effects revolution all at once. The fact that it holds together at all is impressive. The fact that it soars is ridiculous. My final verdict. The Matrix remains one of the defining films of modern science fiction because it gives blockbuster pleasure our philosophical nervous system. It is cool, yes, almost absurdly cool, but the coolness has architecture. The slow motion, sunglasses, leather, a green code, and impossible fights endure because they are attached to a question that never stopped mattering. What parts of your life are real and what parts were installed? That question follows you out of the movie. It follows you into work, into screens, into identity, into belief. That is why The Matrix did not merely age well. It escaped its own decade. The final image of Neo flying should not work. It should be too much, too comic book, too messianic, too clean. But after everything the film has built, it feels earned. Not because Neo has become mere invincible, but because he has stopped negotiating with a false reality. He tells the machines he will show the people a world without rules, then rises into the sky like cinema itself just to remember it could dream bigger. That is the legacy of The Matrix. A film about waking up that woke up the movies around it. The strange thing about The Matrix is that it should feel trapped in 1999. The phones, the hacker fashion, the industrial rock attitude, the leather coats, the sunglasses, the green monitor aesthetic on paper, all of it belongs to a very specific end-of-century moment, but it refuses to stay there. It keeps slipping forward. Every decade finds a new way to claim it because the central fear underneath the film was never really about dial-up internet or office cubicles. It was about systems so deeply embedded in daily life that people stop recognizing them as systems. That is why the film still feels modern in the age of smartphones, algorithmic feeds, social media identities, surveillance capitalism, and artificial intelligence. In 1999, The Matrix looked like our virtual prison. Today, the metaphor feels less like fantasy and more like atmosphere. People live here through screens, perform versions of themselves, accept invisible ranking systems, and receive reality through platforms built to shape attention. The machines in the film plug humans into pods. The modern world does not need pods. It has notifications, software prison, a better interface, and that is where the film's prophecy becomes uncomfortable. The Matrix does not say people are controlled only by force. It says control works best when people participate in it. The Matrix gives its prisoners jobs, routines, food, entertainment, social roles, and the illusion of choice. That is why Cypher remains such an important character. He is not stupid. He knows the truth and still chooses the ally because the light tastes better. That scene becomes more relevant with time. Comfort is not the opposite of control. Sometimes comfort is the method. Neo's journey also holds up because it is not only about becoming powerful. That is the shallow reading. The deeper reading is about becoming conscious. His final power is not strength, speed, or our flight. It is perception. He sees the code. He understands the structure beneath appearance. That is the fantasia audiences keep returning to, not just to beating the system, but finally seeing the system clearly. In a world overloaded with information, Clarity becomes its own superhero ability. The movie's style also remains powerful because it was never random coolness. Many films from the late 90s have aged into fashion museums. The Matrix aged into iconography. There is a difference. The black coats and sunglasses still work because they represent chosen identity. The green code still works because it represents hidden structure. Bullet time still works because it represents perception breaking free from our ordinary limits. These images are not just nostalgic, they still communicate instantly. Far course. The film has also been flattened by popularity. The red pill became a meme, then our slogan, then a phrase pulled into political and cultural arguments far removed from the movie's original emotional complexity. That happens to myths. Once an image becomes powerful enough, people start using it whether they understand it or not. But the misuse of the Matrix does no to erase the original. If anything, it proves how deeply the metaphor entered a public language. Weak symbols stay inside movies. Strong symbols escape and become mere contested territory. The trans reading of the Matrix has also become more central with time. Especially after Lana and Lilia Wachowski publicly came out as trans women. That context does not reduce the film to one interpretation, but it enriches it. Thomas Anderson lives under a name given by the system. Neo is the name he chooses. The world tells him reality is fixed. His entire journey proves that reality can be rewritten. The body, the mirror, the rebirth, the chosen family, the terror of living inside a false role. All of that resonates differently now. The film did not change. Viewers learn how to see another layer. That layered quality is why The Matrix survives better than many films that copied it. The imitators borrowed slow motion, black clothing, techno music, waifu, and digital paranoia, but they often missed the emotional engine. The Matrix works because every surface connects to the same question. Who are you when the world's rules are revealed as artificial? Without that question, bullet time, I suggest a trick. With it, bullet time becomes philosophy in motion. The film also remains modern because it trusts the audience's intelligence without abandoning pleasure. That balance is rare. It does not stop every 10 minutes to explain every philosophical reference. It gives you enough to feel the depth, then lets action carry the pulse. The result is a movie that can be watched at multiple levels. A teenager can enjoy the fights. A film student can study the visual grammar. A philosopher can unpack the allegory. A casual viewer can simply feel the thriller of awakening. The door opens differently depending on who walks through it. And maybe that is the real reason The Matrix keeps breathing. It is not our closed text. It is a machine for interpretation. Every viewer brings their own prison to it. Work, technology, identity, capitalism, familiar expectation, political ideology, depression, social pressure, whatever invisible structure has taught them to shrink. The film offers a fantasy that feels almost dangerously seductive. What if the limits were not natural? What if someone could show you the code? What if the life you were told to accept was only one version of reality? That question is bigger than 1999, bigger than Cyberpunk, bigger than Keanu Reeves in a long coat. The Matrix remains modern because modern life keeps producing new matrices, new systems of illusion, comfort, identity, and control. The film does not give us an easy escape route. It gives us a demand. Wake up, then decide what kind of freedom you can actually endure. And once that idea leaves the first movie, it crashes into a much messier question. What happens when a perfect myth becomes a franchise? The moment The Matrix became our franchise, it entered dangerous territory. The first film works like a perfect door. Clean question, clean awakening, clean final image. Neo flies. Rage Against the Machine kicks in. The audience leaves feeling like the rules of cinema just bent. That kind of ending is powerful because it suggests infinite possibility without having to explain it. Sequels, by nature, destroy that mystery. You have to open the door, walk through, map the hallway, name the architecture, and risk making the myth smaller by explaining too much. The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions did not take the safe path. That is both their greatest virtue and their biggest problem. The Wachowskis could have made a simple sequel, more bullet time, more leather, more woe. Instead, they expanded the mythology into something denser, stranger, more political, more spiritual, and much less instantly satisfying. Zion became more than an idea. The machines gained complexity. The prophecy became suspect. The oracle's guidance became part of our larger system. The one was no longer just a miracle. He was a function inside a repeating cycle. That is bold, also risky, very risky. The biggest shock of the sequels is that they challenge the emotional simplicity of the first film. In 1999, the fantasy was clear. Wake up, see the lie, fight the system. But Reloaded complicates that fantasy by suggesting even rebellion may have been anticipated, managed, and folded back into the machine. The architect scene is frustrating on purpose, though maybe too frustrating for its own good. Suddenly, the prophecy sounds less like divine truth and more like system maintenance. Neo is not the first anomaly. Zion has been destroyed before. Choice exists, but in Sadia architecture designed to absorb it. Thatu is a colder, a more adult idea than the first film's A Heroic Awakening. And this is where many viewers bounced off. The first film makes philosophy feel physical. The sequels often make philosophy feel verbal. Characters explain systems, cycles, casualty, purpose, choice, control. Sometimes the ideas are fascinating. Sometimes the movie feels like it has locked the audience in a room with a graduate seminar wearing sunglasses. The Wachowskis were still chasing big ideas, but the ratio changed. In the original, every concept had a body, red pill, a spoon, agent, phone, bullet, jump. In other sequels, ideas sometimes arrive as architecture of speech. That can be compelling. It can also be exhausting. Yet, dismissing the sequels as filler is too easy. Messy does not mean empty. Reloaded contains some of the franchise's most ambitious action of filmmaking, especially the freeway chase. That sequence understands escalation beautifully. Motorcycles, ghostly and winds, cars crushed like soda cans, Trinity weaving through traffic, Morphe use of fighting on top of a speeding truck, agent staking over bodies mid-chaos. It is enormous, but it still has geography. The scene expands the physical grammar of the original while proving the Wachowskis still knew how to make action feel like thought under pressure. Revolutions, meanwhile, shifts the franchise into war film and spiritual sacrifice. The defense of Zion is massive, loud, muddy, and desperate. It lacks the elegant cool of the first movie, beauty that may be the point. The fantasy of awakening eventually leads to the uglier reality of survival. Freedom is not slow-motion glamour. Freedom is people screaming inside metal suits while machines pour through the ceiling. The final battle between Neo and Smith pushes the series into mythic excess. Rain, impact craters, flying bodies, apocalyptic repetition. It is not subtle, but The Matrix was never truly subtle. It was sincere enough to risk looking ridiculous. Agent Smith's evolution across the sequels is one of the smartest franchisee decisions. In the original, he represents system control. After Neo destroys him, he becomes something worse. Control without purpose, a replication without limit, hatred freed from hierarchy. Smith turns into a virus, which beautifully reverses his own speech from the first film. He accused humanity of being viral, then he becomes the thing he despised. Hugo Weaving plays this expansion with a theatrical relish, but underneath the spectacle is a sharp idea. Systems can create the monsters that will eventually consume them. The franchise's misreadings are almost as important as the films themselves. The red pill metaphor became detached from its source and used in ways that often flatten or invert the movie's meaning. Some people read The Matrix as purely individualist fantasy. One special man wakes up and dominates reality. But the film is far more communal than that. Neo survives because Trinity loves him, Morpheus believes in him, Tank guides him, the Oracle manipulates him toward choice, and countless others sacrifice for the possibility of our freedom. Awakening is personal, beauty liberation is collective. Forgetting that turns the metaphor into ego fuel. Another common misreading is that the film is anti-technology. It is not. The rebels are hackers. They depend on our technology constantly. Their ship, weapons, communication systems, training programs, and exits all run through machines. The enemy is not technology itself. The enemy is domination through a technology. That distinction matters even more now. The question is not whether tools are good or bad. The question is what controls the tools, what values are built into them, and whether human beings become users, citizens, products, or batteries. Then came The Matrix Resurrections, a sequel that functions almost like a critique of sequels. Instead of trying to recreate the original's clean mythic charge, it turns the franchise into a hall of mirrors, a corporate exploitation, nostalgia traps, a therapy language, a game design, memory, repetition, and the pain of being forced to revisit your own creation because the machine demands more content. It is uneven, deliberately abrasive, and in places almost anti-blockbuster. But its emotional core, the connection between Neo and Trinity, feels sincere. The film argues that love, not chosen or one mythology, is the force that breaks the repetition. That is a very different Matrix, older and sadder. What the expanded franchise proves is that the Matrix was never only about a cool aesthetics. If it were, the sequels would have been easier. Just repeat the look, repeat the moves, repeat the catchphrases. But the Wachowskis kept attacking their own mythology, questioning prophecy, complicating freedom, exposing systems inside systems. The results are far from consistent. At times the films are exhilarating, at others they feel overstuffed. Some moments are breathtakingly beautiful, while others can be frustrating. Yet through all of it, they remain vibrant and full of ambition. Rather than offering lazy continuations, the sequels challenge the original film, questioning its ideas instead of simply repeating them. And perhaps that's the most fitting destiny for a story centered on awakening. Awakening is never a simple or tidy process. The first revelation feels powerful because it shatters the illusion you've always believed. But what follows is far more difficult. You begin to realize that rebellion has its limits, that your choices may have been influenced all along, and that even your heroes might simply be fulfilling predetermined roles. Freedom often demands sacrifice and compromise. Victory doesn't always look like complete domination. The original The Matrix presents the dream of waking up. The films that follow ask a far more challenging question: what happens after you've awakened, and can you truly live with what you've discovered? It's a messier, less iconic, and much harder story to sell, but it's part of the same narrative. The myth didn't remain untouched or perfect. Instead, it expanded, fractured, questioned itself, and evolved into something far more complex than a single cinematic masterpiece. That complexity naturally leads to the franchise's lasting cultural legacy. Measuring the impact of The Matrix is almost impossible because its influence extended far beyond the world of film. Its ideas spread across countless areas of culture, including cinema, fashion, advertising, video games, internet language, philosophy, action choreography, technology, and conversations about identity. Wherever you look, traces of The Matrix can still be found. That's an extraordinary achievement. Many successful films generate enormous box office revenue, and many acclaimed films earn prestigious awards. But only a select few become part of the cultural framework people have used to understand and describe reality itself. The Matrix accomplished exactly that. It gave modern audiences both the visual imagery and the language to express the unsettling feeling that the world isn't as free or as real as it appears. Its influence on action filmmaking was immediate and unmistakable. The groundbreaking bullet time effect quickly became one of the most imitated visual techniques of its generation. Filmmakers, advertisers, music video directors, and parody creators all rushed to recreate its signature shots, sometimes out of admiration and sometimes in hopes of capturing the same magic. Before long, slow-motion sequences with rotating cameras became a familiar sight across popular media. Yet the film's greatest contribution wasn't the visual effect itself. Its real innovation was showing that action could represent a character's state of mind. Neo doesn't dodge bullets simply because the filmmakers wanted an unforgettable action scene. He does it because his understanding of reality has fundamentally changed. The action reflects his growing awareness, turning physical movement into a visual expression of thought. Many films attempted to recreate that formula, but few matched its depth. The movie also transformed the way Hollywood approached martial arts and action choreography. Before The Matrix, many American action films relied heavily on gunfire, explosions, raw physical force, and rapid editing to create excitement. After its release, carefully choreographed martial arts, wire-assisted stunts, and the graceful movement inspired by Hong Kong cinema became much more common in mainstream filmmaking. Directors could no longer depend on quick cuts to hide weak choreography. Audiences had experienced actors moving with remarkable precision, rhythm, balance, and almost superhuman elegance. Combat no longer felt like a simple contest of strength. It became a philosophical confrontation where belief mattered just as much as physical ability. That's why the dojo sequence remains so memorable. The true battle isn't simply about who is stronger, it's about who understands the nature of reality and its rules. Video games embraced The Matrix almost effortlessly because the film already operated according to game-like logic. It introduced concepts such as rules, levels, avatars, downloadable abilities, simulated worlds, hidden systems, and reality itself as programmable code. Games didn't just borrow its visual style, they adopted its underlying philosophy. The fantasy of seeing the code beneath the surface, bending the rules, unlocking new powers, and navigating dangerous digital worlds became central to how an entire generation imagined virtual reality and digital empowerment. Even games with no direct connection to the franchise carried a touch of the Matrix whenever they portrayed reality as something that could be rewritten and identity as something expressed through an avatar. Fashion was equally transformed. Long black trench coats, sleek sunglasses, heavy boots, leather, vinyl, and sharp, minimalist silhouettes quickly became iconic, but the appeal went far beyond style alone. The look symbolized reinvention. The rebels dressed like people who had rejected ordinary society and created entirely new identities built on mystery, confidence, and quiet power. That sense of self-creation made the aesthetic impossible to ignore, turning it into one of the defining fashion influences of the late 1990s and early 2000s. Wearing Matrix-inspired clothing was never just about copying a character's style. It was about adopting the mindset of someone who had seen through the illusion. Predictably, advertisers borrowed the film's most recognizable visuals: slow-motion action, cascading green code, dark sunglasses, and reality glitches. The language of rebellion was transformed into a powerful marketing tool. The irony is almost impossible to ignore. A film that warned audiences about systems of control eventually became one of the most influential visual languages for selling products. Yet that contradiction doesn't diminish the film's impact. If anything, it reinforces one of its central ideas. Powerful symbols are often absorbed by the very systems they challenge. Rather than destroying rebellion, those systems frequently repackage it, assign it a price, and display it on billboards. Few examples illustrate this better than the phrase, "a glitch in the Matrix." Today, people casually use it to describe copyright taboo, strange coincidences, uncanny moments, visual oddities, or those unsettling instances when reality seems slightly out of place. That is a remarkable cultural achievement. The Matrix gave people a name for a feeling they had long experienced but never quite knew how to describe. The same is true of the red pill and blue pill metaphor, although its meaning has become increasingly debated and reshaped over time. Once an idea leaves a film and enters everyday language, it no longer belongs solely to its creators. It becomes part of the wider world, where meanings evolve, clash, and change. Philosophically, The Matrix served as a gateway for countless viewers. For many, it was their first encounter, whether directly or indirectly, with questions philosophers had been exploring for centuries. How can we know reality is truly real? What does freedom mean if our desires can be manufactured? Can the truth be too painful to accept? Is identity something we discover or something we choose? The film didn't invent these ideas. They reach back through Plato's allegory of the cave, Descartes' evil demon, Baudrillard's theory of simulation, Buddhist concepts of illusion, and Gnostic ideas of spiritual imprisonment. What The Matrix accomplished was turning these abstract philosophies into unforgettable cinema. It transformed complex ideas into emotion, action, and personal choice. A classroom can explain simulation theory, but The Matrix allows audiences to experience what that uncertainty feels like. Its legacy surrounding identity may be even more powerful. As the Wachowskis' public lives influenced how audiences viewed their work, the film gradually came to represent far more than a cyberpunk story about freedom. It became a story about imposed identities and the courage to become who you truly are. Thomas Anderson represents conformity. Neo represents awakening. The system insists on one version of reality, while the individual senses another beneath the surface. That conflict reaches far beyond science fiction. Anyone who has ever felt misunderstood, trapped by expectations, forced into a role, or pressured to live someone else's version of life can recognize themselves in Neo's journey. That is why the film's legacy continues to grow instead of remaining fixed in time. It can be interpreted through political, spiritual, technological, psychological, or deeply personal perspectives. None of these interpretations fully defines it, and that's exactly what makes it so enduring. The Matrix works like a prism. Shine any modern anxiety through it, and it reflects an entire spectrum of meaning. Concerned about capitalism, the human battery farms are waiting. Questioning our increasingly digital lives, the simulation is waiting. Exploring gender and identity, Neo's transformation is waiting. Thinking about religion, prophecy, sacrifice, death, and resurrection are waiting. Reflecting on cinema itself, even the screen begins to resemble The Matrix. The film continues to reveal new meanings because its emotional foundation remains timeless. At its heart, The story is surprisingly simple. Someone senses that something is deeply wrong with the world. They choose to follow that feeling. They sacrifice comfort in exchange for truth. They suffer, grow, and ultimately become more fully themselves. It is both one of humanity's oldest stories and one of its most modern. The genius of The Matrix lies in showing that awakening is both exhilarating and terrifying. It never pretends the truth comes without sacrifice. The red pill doesn't give Neo a better apartment, a better career, or an easier existence. It gives him reality. The film asks a difficult question. Is reality worth the pain? Its answer is yes, but never lightly, never without acknowledging the cost. So what remains after the groundbreaking visual effects, the sequels, the memes, the parodies, and decades of competing interpretations? A film that still feels alive because it was built on genuine curiosity, genuine fear, and genuine conviction. The Wachowskis didn't create a cold intellectual puzzle. They created a cinematic alarm clock. Bold, stylish, sincere, occasionally heavy-handed, often elegant, and impossible to ignore. The film suggests that the world may not be what it seems, but it also insists that perception can change, people can grow, love can overcome death, and even the most powerful systems can be challenged by those willing to see them clearly. That is why The Matrix continues to endure. Not because of bullet time, not because of black trench coats, not because of glowing green code, iconic poses, or endlessly quotable dialogue. Those are only the surface. Its true legacy is the feeling it leaves behind. Suspicion becomes awareness. Awareness becomes choice. Choice becomes transformation. The film looks directly at its audience and quietly asks a single question. Are you awake? More than 25 years later, that question still resonates, perhaps even more powerfully than before. Maybe the world has become more Matrix-like, or maybe the film simply taught us how to recognize what was already there. Either way, once you've seen the code, you can never completely unsee it. And that's cinema accomplishing something truly rare, and not simply entertaining its audience, but permanently changing the way they question the world around them.